Hello grade 12s, my name is Joyce Motlakane. Welcome to today's session. We are going to be focusing on the exam guide for Mathematical Literacy Paper 1 and let's get right into our lesson. Well, as we remember that our question paper is out of 150 marks for 3 hours and it will be having 3 topics, namely it's going to be having finance, which is plus or minus 90 marks, and it's going to be having data handling, that is about plus or minus 53 marks, and a small section on probability, that is plus or minus 7 marks. This is just the topics that are going to be in our paper 1. Just moving on with the overall structure of our paper, we're going to be having 4 or 5 questions. The first question is going to be based on both finance and data handling, all the topics. But as you will see when we continue, the levels of questioning are different from the other questions. Then we have our question 2, which will focus mainly on finance, and question 3 will focus mainly on data handling, not forgetting that in all these questions, probability can be assessed. Continuing with the overall structure of our paper, we have question 4. It can be question 4 and question 5, or the examiner can choose just to give you question 4. What can we expect from there? Then we're going to have our finance and data handling. It's going to be integrated there, and not forgetting our growth charts. We know that growth charts are usually in paper 2, but now the examiner might focus on the measures of spread. We're talking about our range, we're talking about our interquartile range. Then probability can also be featured in this question 4. So in any question, you can expect to find a question on probability. Each question is going to be having more than one context. In other words, question 1.1 will have a different scenario from question 1.2. So expect that in all your questions. All right. Now, let's talk about the levels of questions that we can expect in paper 1. We have the level 1 questions, that is the knowing, what you're supposed to know. It's either you know it or you don't. Most of the time, it requires your general knowledge and some easy, simple calculations that you can expect in level 1 kind of questions. And it's going to be about 45 marks. 45 marks is about 30 marks. So already with level 1s, you have your pass. But we're not just working for pass, we're working for distinctions, some of us. So let's go and check out what to expect in level 2 kind of questions. We have routine procedure calculations, which will be about 45 marks as well. What are these kind of questions that I'm talking about, where they ask you to perhaps calculate the range or the mean, or maybe asking you to calculate the simple interest? Those kind of questions that expect you to do routine kind of questions that you know, that you are familiar with. That is going to be level 2 and about 45 marks. Just notice already with question on level 1 and question on level 2s, you have 60%. You passed for both papers. Again, some of us are working for distinctions. Let's see what to expect in level 3s. There you have your multi-step procedures. We're talking about questions like tax, calculate tax payable. We're talking about calculating the compound interest. Any question that requires you to do more than 2 steps, that is what we call a multi-step question. And it will also have plus or minus 30 marks. Level 4, this is what a lot of us are struggling with, but we can still get it right. We have reasoning and reflecting. This is where now they take your level 3 and maybe make it a bit higher by saying verify this text if it was calculated correctly. Or they can ask you, what are the reasons why, or mention one reason why this and this is happening, where they ask you to now use your mind to reason on whatever question that they would have given you. So these are the levels that you will hear me talking a lot about as I continue in my presentation. Some action verbs that are very crucial. You might not find all of them in maths literacy, but you need to understand what are they actually asking you for when they give you that action verb. Action verbs like analyze. We expect you to separate things. We expect you to interpret information. Just tell us what is going on there by interpretation. We expect you to calculate. This usually we want answers that are numerical. Then it means you need to show us all your workings. It's very crucial. Avoid writing answers only because sometimes you can make mistakes in the question. So if we have steps, we can follow up on your steps. Classifying data, we're talking grouping things together. Classify this as discrete or continuous. You can also be asked to compare. We're talking similarities of things or the differences. Compare between simple and compound interest. What are the differences? Which one is giving you a higher interest? Definitions, be clear, be precise. If we ask you to perhaps define inflation, we expect you to give us that definition, but it's also crucial that you understand that they will sometimes ask you in context. So you need to be clear what is that inflation rate in that scenario that you are given. Moving along with action verbs, describe, you're just stating. State in words the concept that is assessed. Maybe they ask you to describe the trend of the graph. Describe it word for word. Determine, calculating, but sometimes you just need to discover the answer from whatever information that you are given and to get us to the answer without doing any calculations. You can be expected to discuss. That's when you consider all the information and reach a conclusion. Differentiate between two things. Maybe you can be asked to differentiate between categorical and numerical. So you need to know what is expected of you. Explain, we want you to be clear and give us that explanation loud and clear so that we can understand what you are explaining to us. This usually will also be in your level 4 kind of questioning. Identify, we're just looking for the name. Identify this type of graph that is given here. If you don't know the graphs, it's going to be difficult for you to identify that graph. Listing, give us a list. Maybe they're asking you about the province that had a higher rate of crime. You need to list those provinces. Just listing them, nothing more. Name, it's similar to list. You're going to be doing the same thing. Don't give us information that is not needed. Just give us that name that you are asked for. Stating, again, writing down. Level 1 questions, they like to ask you to state. So be in consideration of that. Suggest, now you're going to be offering us explanations or solutions. What is your suggestion on this? How can we make this situation better? That is somewhat, again, it can go to your level 4 kind of questions. Right, so what type of questions can we expect in question 1? Well, we have about 30 marks plus or minus 30 marks in question 1. And it's only level 1 questions that might be assessed. Your definition, your simple calculations. This really, grade 12 is the section that you should score, if not the whole 30, maybe 20 something. This is actually where you can really do good. But you need to know your basic calculations, your rate, your ratio, writing something as a percentage of something. So all this general knowledge and basic calculations are very crucial, how to use your BODMAS in context, of course. So that's what you can expect in question number 1. Right, and then we have question number 2. All taxonomy levels may be assessed from your define something to your verify something. Just a reminder of what to expect in your finance question. You can expect your documents. There are quite a number. Go revise them. Your tariffs, income, expenditure, profit, loss, and budgets. your cost, selling price, and break-even point. You can be asked to analyze that break-even point. Interest, we're talking simple compound interest. Bank loans, your car finance or your home loans, your investments. Inflation, taxation, it can be broken into UIF, VAT, and your personal tax. Remind yourselves of these, boys and girls. Exchange rate as well forms part of your finance question. All right, let's move on to question number 3. There we have data handling. Data handling is the same as question number 2. Levels 1 up until 4 can be assessed. Sections that you can expect in this, it's where now you are asked to come up with a question, or you can be asked to correct the question that is given and write it in a way that is appropriate. Classifying your data in terms of discrete, continuous, categorical, numerical. Organizing your data into tallies. Summarizing it into measures of central tendency. We're talking your mean, your mode, your median, and also measures of spread, which is your range and interquartile range. Representing it on graphs, this is one of the sections that you can score a lot of marks, because they can ask you to draw a broken line graph. That's about 4 marks or so. So make sure that you plot your graph appropriately or correctly. Analyzing data, you can be given data or you can be given a graph for you to interpret the trend, if the graph is misleading or not, and so on. Take note that a probability will be integrated in any of the 3 questions that I've mentioned so far. Question number 4 or question number 5, again, integrated context. All levels, you can expect level 1 to level 4. The only difference is that now they can incorporate things that you are not used to, things that are not normal to your everyday life. Maybe they're talking about exchange rates in a different country. You need to now know how to work that out. Then you have a probability. Again, in this question, you can find a question on probability. All right, things that you should remember, just some general tips on how you can go about answering this question 1. Well, we know very well that there is no way that you won't find a question on definition. So it's very, very important that you go back and you study the notes that your teachers gave you on all the terminologies in Maths Literacy, Paper 1. Read your instructions carefully. They give you time to read those instructions. You are expected to round off according to context. If you don't read the instructions, you don't know what is expected of you. And when they tell you to skip a line, do skip a line. When they tell you to start a question on a new page, do start a question on the new page. Manage your time wisely. We all know that in Maths Literacy, 1 mark is about 1.2 minutes. So if you have a question of 5 marks, you are expected to spend at least 6 minutes on that question, not longer than that. So budget your time wisely. On questions that are just 1-word answer, just answer it. You don't need 1.2 minutes to do that. Just answer it quickly so that you budget that time for those questions that ask you to verify and compare. Already I've mentioned that your question. I've mentioned that you must start the question on a new page, but now we want you to start with question 1. Preferably, we know that you can start with any question as long as you answer all of it in full. Don't answer 1.1 and go answer 2.2. No, you need to answer a question full, underline it, and start on a new page. Question 1 is just going to give you that feel that you can really answer this question, because the questions are relatively easy. So it's advisable that you start with question number 1. And then moving on, one of the things that can help you is that when you read, underline your keywords so that you can always go back to them and see, okay, what are they actually asking here? But if you don't underline anything in your statement, it might be difficult for you to really understand what is it that they're looking for. Show us your calculations. Be clear. If you're talking about calculating tax, tell us all those steps that you're doing. Don't just write equals to, equals to, equals to. Are you calculating tax payable? Are you calculating tax after rebates? Be clear on what you are calculating and round off accordingly. If they say to the nearest 1,000, to the nearest million, do that according to the context. Don't forget to write your units. You're talking about rents. write rents. You're talking about people, write people, so that we also know what you are talking about. Your conversion of cents to rents, here it's a matter of rounding off according to what they're asking you. If they want the answer in cents, give it in cents. If they want it in rents, give it in rents. Okay, now boys and girls, we're going to take a short break. Then when we come back, we're going to now go into when we see those action verbs, what are we then supposed to do? See you after this. Grade 12s, welcome back from the break. We are going to continue with our lesson. We're now going to consider how to approach the questions that we might find in the exam. Remember, we're doing Mathematical Literacy, Paper 1. There's an example of a question. Just look at the way I go about reading the question and what do I focus on. Okay, so it says there, every month, Statistics South Africa, Stats SA, collects data relating to prices of 44 common household goods. This is called the Household Food Index, HFI. The HFI for some South African cities, and the difference in rand and percentage change for 3 months in 2020 is given in Table 1 on the side. Use the information above to answer the questions that follow. Look at your information that is provided, the graph against the statement. I've underlined what I believe would help me to answer the questions that come. So also you do the same. Mark off what detail you think is important for that section. Look at the table, study the table. You've got cities, you've got index in rent, you've got change in rent and percentages. In so doing, you know where to go when you get you come across a question. Let's go to the question that can be asked from this diagram that is given or the table that is given. It says there, define. Remember the action verbs that we learned? Define is give a clear meaning of what that term is. So we are asked to define inflation, but notice in the context given. Context is the scenario that you're talking about. So in this question, how you can answer it, obviously you need to know your term, inflation, what does it mean? But not forgetting that you should explain it based on what you are seeing in the statement. Maybe to give you a reminder, we're talking about goods, we're talking about month to month. So your inflation definition should have the context in mind. Okay, let's see another question that can be asked under this section. It says arrange the cities in the change in percentage column for October to November. In what? In descending order of percentages. So now you know that you need to go to the change in percentage. Now you know that you need to arrange. In what form? In descending order. How do you answer this question? Go back to your table and look for the change in percentage. This is the change in percentage. But they were specific to say October to November. This is what we are talking about. I'm sure you also see it. You saw it there where you are sitting. You're going to come here and arrange. So also remind yourself of what does it mean when they say descending and what does it mean when they say ascending, so that you don't confuse the two when you are answering your question. All right, I hope that makes sense. Moving along to the next question, they can ask you to calculate. Remember I said in question 1, it's simple calculations. Either you will be adding, you'll be subtracting or dividing. Nothing out of the ordinary. Calculate the missing value A. Where is A? Again, you need to go back to the information that is given. Go look for A. Here is A. What do I know about A? Is there anything going down my table that can assist me? No, I don't have the total at the bottom here, so this is not going to help me. But if you look across your table, then you can see there's something that I can use. It's set there from September to November. In other words, when you go to your index in rand, you focus on those 2 months. You see, now you can see, here I need to be calculating the difference, or I need to be subtracting the 2 because they're talking about the range in September to November. We had to go back to our table for us to see how to calculate A. Very, very important. Yes, moving right along to question number 1.4. It says there, which city? They're looking for the name of the city that has what? The largest increase in the rand from October to November. So which of these cities that are listed here had that largest increase? You go to your table, index in rand. We're talking from October to November. How do you then find that out? You need to go and read your values here and see which one showed the biggest increase from October to November. And then you go to your left-hand side and select that city and write it down, just that city, and that's it. Again, we're still focusing on level 1 questions, so easy questions that you can really score a lot of marks on. Another example of question 1 that you can come across, it's here that says, Stella decides to crochet baby shoes to sell online. Her startup costs. What does it mean again when they talk about startup cost? They're mainly talking about that money that she requires to start a business, sort of like her fixed expense. It says it includes the buying of crochet needles, pattern templates, and creating an advertisement pamphlet. They are now continuing to tell us that crochet is a process of making clothes from wool or cotton yarn by using a crochet needle to interlock loops of yarn. That's just the picture to show you what they're talking about. Other people have photographic memory, so this can really make them understand what the statement is about. An extra A shows graphs X and Y representing the business performance of the first 20 pairs of shoes made. Let us go and see that graph they're talking about. Here is your annexure. So here the annexure will be given in a different page. Make sure to go to the annexure to see what is it all about. So 2 graphs are given here. Let's see what kind of questions they can ask us from these 2 graphs. The first question there says, write down the value of the startup point. The value, how much is that startup point? Now, I just took a picture of this graph just to show you. You've got 2 graphs. One starts at 0 and 0. One starts somewhere up there. You need to know which one is your cost and which one is your income graph. We know that cost can never start at 0 because you always have those amounts that we call the startup points. So this is your startup points. Most of you sometimes you get confused on how to read off these tiny lines. How can you do that? Well, you can just go back at the bottom here from 0 to 100. Count how many tiny lines you have there. As I go counting, I count about 10 lines. So these 10 lines, I will just take my 100 and divide it by 10. When I say 100 divided by 10, that gives me 10. In other words, it tells me that these small lines represent 10, 10, 10. In this case, because I'm talking money, it's 10 rands. So from 200, counting 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, then you can end at your answer correctly. So that's how you can read off the graph. Always know what is the scale that was used to get to the values that they've given you. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Question 1.3.2, it says there's 6 pairs of shoes must be sold to break even. Explain, give us an explanation of the meaning of the term break even. Where is your break even? They said 6 of them needs to be sold. So this is your break even. What do you notice? And explain in full what happens at that point. Tell us that information. And that's how you can interpret this graph, boys and girls. The next type of question that we can expect to find is where now they give us information that has graphs as different graphs, unlike the one on the previous slide. It says the information below represents 3 meal options for the same meal. You've got your Mr. Delivery, Uber Eats, and restaurant, and you can see them here at the bottom as you continue, the price, delivery fees, and total. What are they requiring us to find in this section? They're saying identify the type, single out the type of graph that is used here. What kind of graph is it? So if you don't know your graphs, you won't tell us which one is this graph. Just also something that you should take note of. Tell us if it's a vertical or a horizontal bar graph. We can easily just say bar graph, but sometimes remember you can be given a horizontal one, the one that goes across. So be specific on what type of graph you are given. 1.2.2 there it says write down. Writing down, you go and you get something, but sometimes you need to do a little bit of small calculation there. So here they want us to write down the difference between the highest price and the lowest price of the meal excluding delivery. How do you find that out? Go back to your graph. Read off prices. Focus on the prices. Get the one that is big, get the one that is small, and find the difference. In mathematics, usually when they talk about difference in mathematical literacy, they're talking about subtracting. You will need to do either some subtraction, unless if they ask you what is the difference, then you will explain to us this one has that and this one has that. Okay, right. So this is level 1's question 1, easy collection of marks and get your 30 or 29 or 28, somewhere there. Let us now go to question number 2. Question number 2, it has a question on taxation. It says Neil, it's a 55-year-old who earns 199,000 gross salary per annum, meaning per year. He contributes 7.5% to pension fund. He also contributes towards medical aid for himself, 1, and 3 other people, meaning 4 in total. Calculate the amount of tax he has to pay monthly. So all that I've underlined, it makes sense to say it will help me if you know what is required to calculate tax. Let us see the income tax table that you are given. Now remember, grade 12s, this is what we call our tax table. You're going to use it to calculate tax. Rebates, you're going to subtract, as we will see, even the medical tax credits. Don't confuse your tax threshold into subtracting it when you are calculating tax. This is just to give us an indication of who is eligible or who qualifies to pay taxes. So it's not a table that you're going to use. Sometimes they give it in your tax table diagram, sometimes they don't. So if they do, don't go subtracting it when you are calculating tax. All right, so here's a diagram that I found very helpful that can help you as well. You can just go through it on your own to see what are those basic steps that you need to follow to calculate your tax. But for now, we're just going to focus on what we are asked to do. So we are given a gross salary that he earns. So where are we? We are here. When we have a gross salary, we need to go subtracting our non-taxable income. In this case, this person has pension fund. So for you to find your taxable income, you need to work with that pension fund accordingly. And then if the person was donating, then you would also subtract your donations as well. But in this case, let's move on with what we are given. Then after you get your taxable income, you would go to your tax brackets. The tax brackets is this one that I showed you. These ones, you go and choose which tax bracket does Neil fall under. You single it out, you write it down, and you do your calculations from there. That amount that you get from using the tax brackets We call it your tax, but that is before you do anything. That is before you take out your rebates. Then from here you say, okay, Neil is just 55 years of age. 55 years, what rebates does he qualify for? You do the calculations with that. And then you go, medical tax credits. Just remember medical tax credits, when you get it at the end, you must multiply by 12. And then you take it from there, boys and girls. Tax is not that difficult, so if you use this table to help you to go around the calculations, I'm sure you will be confident when you sit down for that exam. Just remember UIF, it's 1% from the employer and 1% from the employee. Now the ceiling has been increased. It's no longer that 148 that we used to. Now the ceiling is what? The ceiling is 177 and 12 cents, coming from 17,711 and 58 cents. Take note on that. And UIF, it's not tax deductible. We don't subtract that value when we are calculating tax. It has its own, it's a tax on its own. So when you are going there and you claim your money, that's when they don't tax your money. So here in these calculations, you can keep it on a side. Don't be confused by it. Okay. Now we are going to move right along. Let me just get my pen right. The next question there, it says electricity can be purchased from Eskom in two ways: prepaid and postpaid. Below is an adapted comparative table to answer the questions that follow. So you've got your prepaid, postpaid, fixed monthly charge or fixed monthly cost, and here are your rates. It's in cents. Take note of that. It's cents per kilowatt hour. Look at this question. It says Teboho's family used 286 kilowatts hour of electricity on postpaid. Teboho's brother claimed that his family will pay more than 250 rands for electricity, including VAT. So there's a lot going on, but let's see what the question is asking. They're asking us to verify Teboho's claim. It says verify, showing all calculations whether Teboho's brother's calculations were valid. Remember we said verifying. It's as if they're asking you to recalculate. What are you saying? We are saying this person is telling us this is the answer, but how will we know if that's the answer? We need to go and do the calculations ourselves. So it means you need to go back and do what? Go back and calculate the cost of your electricity. The cost of that 286. Just bear in mind, because we are using the postpaid, we're going to be here. Let me just get a right pen. We're going to be here. With electricity, we don't just go to one of the amounts like intakes. You need to start from 0 to 50. Charge the 50 kilowatts in the first block. The one that is remaining, you charge it, and so on until you charge the whole amount of your electricity kilowatts hour that you have used. Convert your cents to rands if you did not do so in the beginning. Remember, you have a choice of first converting everything to rands and then calculating with rands. Automatically, you will get to the right answer like the other one. Add VAT, because he claimed that after VAT, after 15% is added. So you need to add that 15% using your calculations on VAT. Compare and conclude. You don't look at 250 and start calculating from there. It's only at the end, after you have your calculation. If maybe you have your calculation as an example, 260, then you compare 260 and 250 and say, okay, so it means this person is correct, or it means this person is wrong, depending on what you got when you were doing your recalculations. I hope that verifying question became clear, what you are expected to do as you are writing in that exam. Okay, so question 2.3.2, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It says there a household bought electricity for 720, you underline, we still continue to underline our things. 720 including VAT on the prepaid system. We're no longer talking postpaid. Determine how much electricity they can use. 720, it has a VAT inside. How can you go about answering this question? Well, you need to first calculate that cost of electricity, excluding VAT, because whenever you're calculating the amount of kilowatt hour that the person used, it's before you do any calculations on VAT. Take that 15% out. Just something of note, because this is 115%, we cannot say something divided by 100. What we're going to be dividing with is this 115. Whatever we're looking for is going to be at the top, because we are given an amount that has 15% already inside. Then we're going to multiply it by our cost. Just something to go back and revise grade 12. Then you subtract your fixed costs. In this case, we do have it, it's 200 rands. So we need to take it out. Then the remaining amount, we're going to divide by the cost per charge. Also, notice that the cost per charge is in a different unit. It's in cent. Convert that to rands first, and then you will get the answer. So that's just a few things that you can do as you continue answering your questions. Just look at what is necessary for you to get those marks that you are looking for. Okay, we are going to take a short break now. We're going to come back right after this. Go drink some water and come back for the next part of the questions. Oh, wait, my mask was there. It was just going to show them that it's COVID time. Welcome back, grade 12s. Let us now move on with our question 3, data handling kind of questions. What can we expect? It says mining plays a significant role in the economy of our nation. The information below indicates the how the mining industry performed in 2019. Use the information in the table to answer the questions that follow. There is your table listing all the information, maybe something that you can take note of. It says the employees earns in billion rand. So that 3.5 that's there is not 3.5, but it's 3.5 billion rands. Okay, let's see the kind of questions that they can ask us. It says determine the mean value for the total sales. How do we go about finding that? You need to remember the concept of the mean, but very important, you need to arrange your data. Make sure that your data is arranged in order, descending or ascending. It doesn't matter as long as it is in order. And just remember, if the numbers in the middle, there are 2, maybe let's say you have 4, you've got 8 numbers, the 2 numbers are going to be the medians, and you're going to add them, divide them by 2. Just to remind yourself on when you're dealing with even numbers. Moving along, if they ask you to determine the mean, this is measures of central tendency, mean, mode, median. The mean number of direct employees in the mining industry. Give your final answer to the nearest 1,000. Concept of the mean, add the values, divide, don't forget to round off correctly at the end. They say to the nearest 1,000. Go back to the concept of rounding so that you can round off correctly. But just rest assured, you need to remember how to calculate the mean in that case. And where are you going to be focusing on? They're talking about the direct employees. Here are your direct employees. You work with these values to calculate your mean. Okay. Another question can say, write down the modal, another central tendency, measure of central tendency, the modal value for the royalties paid. Give your answer in the number format, figures without words. In other words, you need to mention or to give your answer in numbers. Where are you going? You go to the royalties paid. Royalties paid, you look for the one that appears the most. Just a reminder that billions, we've got how many zeros? Billions, we've got 9 zeros, yes. So you will be taking this into consideration when you take that, maybe let's say 2.1 billion. If they say million, it's 6, and so on and so on. So just remember how to change that 2.1 billion and making it in a number format. Another question, use calculations to determine if the interquartile range for the total sales of the metals and minerals is less than 101 billion. They want you to use calculations so that you can show them, is it more, is it less? What do we need? Concept of your interquartile range, but not forgetting if the data is not arranged, arrange it. Arrange it so that you can get your values. Again, if you have even numbers, remember that your even numbers, if this is your median and you divided it by 2, this number will form part this side and this number will also form. So it means you will have 4 on this left side and 4 on the right hand side. Go and count. The middle, you will have 2. You will still need to divide for your first quartile. This side, you will also have 2. You will still have to add them and divide so that you can get the median. So that you can get quartile number 3. So very important when you're dealing with even numbers that you need to see what happens. If you cut it in the middle, it's no longer 1, but it's 2 separate. You count it on both sides when you're calculating the interquartile range. Just go back and revise that section. 3.1.5, it says there that express the gold amount paid on the royalties as a percentage of the total amount paid. When you express something as a percentage, you need to be multiplying by 100 at some point. What are you expressing? The amount that you are expressing, your gold amount will be at the top. You are expressing it as a percentage of what? Of a total amount will be at the bottom. You get those 2 values and you write them accordingly. This write something as a percentage of something. They love it even in finance where they say write UIF as a percentage of the total basic salary. So just know how to work around this concept. 3.1.6, probability. They say we must calculate the probability as a percentage. We will multiply by 100. Of randomly selecting a type of metal and minerals that has less than 19,500 direct employees in 2019. What are you expected to do? Go back to your direct employees. Go and look for the ones that are less than. Just as a reminder, probability is always written as something over something. Number of what you're looking for over everything that is in that table. You're going to be counting those values in your direct employees, and then you're going to look for the ones that they are asking you for. Then you work it out from there. Don't forget, multiply it by 100. If they say decimal, just divide the 2 values. If they say in the simplest fraction form, simplify your fraction. Right, so another one, they can ask you to draw a graph. How do we draw a graph? I'm not going to go in detail here, but just remember that the scale that is given is very important. Have they given you the graph that has a lot of lines? You're going to be working with that graph accordingly. So look at your scale like this one. It's a bit faint, but I believe when you do your graph, you will then check, like I showed you in the previous slides, how to find those tiny lines, how much they are. Okay, what else can we expect? Here's a question that is a question 4 kind of question. Remember question 4, we said we're going out of your comfort zone, we're going unfamiliar context. Says there, Lindiwe is interested in early childhood education. She researched that the number of learners enrolled, let me just get my pen. The number of learners enrolled in early childhood, let me just go back. She researched the number of learners enrolled in early childhood education in selected countries. Those are the countries for the years that are given. They are given there for you to interpret. It says use table 1 to answer the questions that follow. Right, the range. But in this case, they have given us the range. They say the range is for 2014 enrollment is 2,949,644. Calculate N. You might seem confused, but how am I going to do that? Go back to your concept of range. Range is equal to the highest value minus the lowest value. Substitute what you are given and go solve for what you are looking for. So just remember how to calculate range. They can ask this in a median form where they give you the median, but they ask you to calculate a missing value. Continue applying the concept of median. Continue applying the concept of mean. Go on doing the concept of interquartile range if they ask you this question in that form. Very important. Describe the trend. What happens? Are you seeing an increase? Are you seeing a decrease? From where to where? Be specific. Tell us from this year to this year, this is what I noticed. This year to that year, that is what I noticed. Okay, so there are many questions, boys and girls. We're not going to have time to go through all of them, but maybe just to do this last question on exchange rates and verifying kind of questions. There it says the cost per child for early childhood education in Denmark in 2016 was 520.83 euros per month, while the comparative cost for Slovenia was 350 euros per month. Lindiwe, listen to what Lindiwe says. Lindiwe stated that the ratio of the total amount spent for all the learners enrolled in 2016 in Denmark compared to Slovenia is more than 5:1. Concept of ratio. How do you verify this statement? Remember I said don't panic. Just go do your calculations on ratio. What do you know? Denmark is to Slovenia. Continue doing your calculations for the cost of the enrollment for each country. Compare the ratios and make your conclusion. As easy as that, but you first need to know what is this ratio that you are talking about and how do you compare ratio. Remember, you're comparing two things of same quantity. Right. Now, really, it has been a very beautiful journey. Like I said, there's so many questions that you can come across in this paper 1. Remember your levels. Go get your question 1, all of it right. But don't forget to relax and believe that you can do this. You are more than capable. You have done this throughout the year. Be ready mentally and physically. Sleep, rest before the day of the exam. It's very important. Take that reading time, that 10 minutes reading time. Go through the paper so that you can see where are you going to be starting with the calculations that you're going to come across. All the very best, Gr12s. We know that you can do this. We know that you are capable, and we know that you're going to get that distinction. We are already proud of you. Thank you very much. That's it from me for today. Goodbye.